Can you imagine, like, just think back to when they won the playoff game at home last year against the Rams, what Detroit was like when they won against Tampa the next week. I mean, it's incredible to think what Detroit would be like if the Lions ever could find a way to get to and win a Super Bowl.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Your Daily Detroit. This show is for Tuesday, April 9th, 2024. We're coming up on episode 1400, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. I am Jer Stays.
And I'm Fletcher Sharp.
And today, a special conversation. Joining us on the line, Adam Schefter. If you need to know anything in the NFL and you need to know it first, he is your guy. I have been watching, listening to his work for years. He's also an advocate for type 1 diabetes screening to take the T1D pledge. Adam, welcome to Daily Detroit. I appreciate you making the time.
Jared Fletcher, I appreciate you having me on for what might be your 1400th episode. Thank you. I'm honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
Well, really glad to have you here. You know, we could start in a ton of ways. Obviously, the NFL draft is coming up this month. That's going to be a part of this conversation. But I want to start talking about type 1 diabetes. There's so many causes to get involved in, Adam, and I know that your time's real valuable. What called to you about this one?
Well, my wife is type 1 diabetic, and I watch what she goes through on a daily basis. You deal with this disease day in and day out, and it's not easy. And so I have been approached by Sanofi to be a spokesperson for the One Pledge movement. And to me, that was invaluable because it's encouraging people to go out and take a blood test that can detect type 1 diabetes before any noticeable symptoms arise, before insulin's required, before any serious complications occur. And to me, it made a lot of sense to encourage people to screen early, to not wait, to go to the onepledge.com today to find out how you can get your family, yourself screened for type 1 diabetes. And it's being just a part of the One Pledge movement. I'm pleased to be a Sanofi spokesperson. There are other people doing it, involved in football, not involved in football. It's an honor to be with it. And I live type 1 diabetes every day through my wife's journey with it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think about type 2. Real quick, kind of what's the thumbnail difference between type 1 and type 2 and the difference and kind of why a blood test and can help get people ahead of the game on this one?
Yeah, type 1 is an autoimmune disease. And basically think about it like this. If your body were a castle and there were an army in charge of protecting that castle, that army would not be protecting that castle. It would be fighting amongst itself within the castle. That's type 1. And type 1 is something that essentially can't be prevented. It can't be cured, but it can be detected. And that's why the onepledge.com is so important, because people can order a blood test that can detect type 1 diabetes related autoantibodies, and your doctor will discuss the results with you and work with you on a care plan if you do a test positive for one or more autoantibodies. So again, that's why we want people to go to the onepledge.com for more information.
So let's get into what's happening in Detroit later this month. How are you feeling in general ahead of this year's draft? It's got to be one of the more exciting times of the year for you.
Well, the draft is always exciting, right? Like, to me, there's all this talk about what teams are going to do and who they're going to be drafting. And what I love about the draft is there's a few things. It's the moment of truth, right? Teams can't hide it any longer. They have to put their cards on the table. This is who we like. This is what we're doing. This is where we feel like we have a weakness. And the other thing about it that's, just awesome is that, you have 250 or so players getting drafted. And this is a moment that 250 players have worked their entire life for. They've worked for years to try to get into a position to be drafted. And now here it is, their dreams coming true. It unfolds on TV. It's a great reality show. So you have teams basically putting their cards on the table, young men's dreams coming true, all happening all at once, all on live TV, all on ESPN. And you know what else it's about? It's about hope, right? It gives hope. Every year, you don't think your team makes a bad draft pick. They do. But you think that every guy is going to be Tom Brady and be the answer to your team's needs. So there's nothing about the draft that's not fun.
For sure, for sure. Now you have a little experience in Michigan. You actually went to University of Michigan down the road. What about the draft being held in Michigan or in Detroit for you, especially? I don't know how much time you've spent in the city versus whatever, how many times you've come through for the Lions or for whatever games. But what about it for the draft being held in Detroit for you, is special?
Well, I spent 4 years of my life in the state of Michigan. I've gone back any number of times to visit. I was involved in a charity golf tournament in Detroit last summer, playing with Roger Clemens. We were the two honorees at that event. It was last summer. I've been back to Detroit any number of times. And what I find to be so cool, first of all, Michigan holds a special place in my soul. It's a part of me, and it helped make me the man that I am today. So that, I think, also is very important. And then we're coming up a year in which Michigan won the national championship, and they have maybe 18 players who are going to be picked in this draft. 18. So when Georgia won the national championship last year, I believe there were 15. Michigan, 18 players go to the combine this year. It was a new record for one school. No school's ever sent that many players to the combine. No school probably will ever have this many players taken in one draft. And it's just fantastic. So I love the idea of getting to go to the draft in Michigan this year. And I know that Michigan will embrace it. It's a great place. Ann Arbor will be up the road. So we're very excited about the whole thing.
When you're in Detroit, I know you're here for a golf tournament, you're here for other events. Where's somewhere you like to stop in? Maybe an eatery, a bakery, flower shop, etc.?
Just to be back on the Michigan campus is unbelievable. Now, if there's a way that I can somehow figure out a way to get me Zingerman's, the delicatessen, on campus, and get that to my hotel in Detroit. I don't even know where I'm staying, to be honest, right now. So, but if there's a way to do that, we I don't know if ESPN's got a runner or an intern or somebody wants to run us sandwiches to wherever we're staying, because I want everybody to experience Zingerman's. Ann Arbor, like I said, has got a lot of great places. Just love being back there, but I would love to be able to get me some Zingerman's there. That would be awesome.
One of the league's great rebuild stories, as you know, is the Detroit Lions. From where you sit, what do you think is at the core of this? For this town, I mean, look, and especially here, and this is truly historic. Rebuilds like this haven't always happened here in Detroit. So for us, it's a really huge deal. So kind of what do you think is at the core of this?
Well, I think you have to start with the fact that they hire Brad Holmes as their general manager. They brought over Mike Disner to be an executive in the front office, and they bring in Dan Campbell, right? Like that's that is, to me, something that's key for that organization as well. Like when you get a whole new brain trust in, and you get them making the decisions that they are, and just bringing a whole new culture and attitude to Detroit. It starts there, right? Now, of course, you got to hit on some players, and they have done that. That's been a big difference as well. But let's be honest, for a long period of time, people looked at the Lions, and they didn't provide much happiness, excitement. They were more a laughingstock than anything else. And now they're viewed as a team that I think is expected to win, that people want to go play for, a team that I would expect to be in numerous primetime games this season with the NFL schedule. Like they're a darling team right now. And that was not the case for a long period of time, but now they are. And so it's a beautiful thing, and Detroit should be. Can you imagine, just think back to when they won the playoff game at home last year against the Rams, what Detroit was like when they won against Tampa the next week. I mean, it's incredible to think what Detroit would be like if the Lions ever could find a way to get to and win a Super Bowl. The city would erupt. It still is a Lions town as much as it is anything else. And anyway, it's been great to watch that organization turn itself around.
You mentioned Dan Campbell. When did you know that he was going to be something special as a coach? I know a lot of people were a little bit skeptical. I know that they knew he had the passion, but when did you kind of realize, this guy has something that people really want to be a part of?
Well, I think you saw it right away. And I think people really got to see it when he was on Hard Knocks, to be perfectly frank. People got a taste of it. It was the first press conference, and the bite the kneecaps and everything like that. People knew what kind of guy he was. And then you got to see more of it on Hard Knocks. And then you get to see the guy on a week-to-week basis after every game, pouring himself out, how much his players care about him. There's a lot of factors. You could see it all along, little signs. I think Hard Knocks is probably the most intense, in-depth look at it, right? Because there was so much unfiltered access to watching him. But people could see all along that he was different, thoughtful, caring, really invested emotionally in his players, and it comes through in the way that he conducts his business.
I mean, I 100% agree. He brings a ton of energy that people they want to run through walls for, man. Like, you listen to him and you're just like, all right, that's a brick wall. I'm going to take it. I'm down. It's a special thing he's got.
Absolutely. No. And you could just see it, and it's made a difference in that franchise. And it's one of the reasons that they are where they are today.
All right, let's get into the draft a little bit for the Lions. Now, it seemed, until some recent unfortunate events with Cam Sutton at cornerback, that they kind of do whatever they want. Do you think that's still kind of the case, or do they need to address some of those needs? What's your sense on what Brad Holmes needs to fill on this roster?
Yeah, I think they're in a spot here where, of course, you have needs, but you need to go take, I don't mean to sound cliche, but the best player available. Like, ideally, that would be offensive line. Like, that would be great if they could go plug some of those needs, some of those questions for depth. Like, they don't need anything really that badly. Like, they could go win and get to the Super Bowl tomorrow, right? But there are positions that could be enhanced and more depth added to. I would have no problem. Offensive line, cornerback certainly would be one. Those would be two that stand out to me right away. But by the way, if all of a sudden there's this great defensive lineman available, no problem there. They certainly could use another pass rusher. Whatever it may be. Like, there's a lot of areas they could go. They're not locked into anything. So I think you have to wait to see how the draft unfolds, the players that fall to you, and you make your decisions from there.
Next season, we expect the NFC North to be a little bit better. There's been some changes. I know Jordan Love has matured in Green Bay. Jordan Addison with the Vikings, the receiving core they have there is great. And Caleb Williams potentially playing with the Bears. What do you think we can expect out of the rest of the NFC North?
Well, I think the Lions, it's an interesting division because the Lions have elevated themselves and they've really stood out. But the Bears are coming and the Packers are coming and the Vikings have lost their quarterback. And it's one of the things that makes football so interesting on a year-to-year basis is that it's sort of like mutual funds. Past performance does not ensure future success. And just because certain teams have done certain things in other years doesn't mean they're going to be better next year. But I think we all can look at the Lions and say they're built the way that you'd want a team to be built. We expect them to continue to win. Now, the question is, are the Packers going to continue to take strides? Are the Bears ready to take that jump? I don't mean it in a disrespectful way, but when the Vikings lose their quarterback, there's no way that organization can't not take a step back. It's just a lot to overcome. So they've got to find a quarterback in this draft and start building up towards the future to get back to where they wanted to be. So to me, Minnesota takes a step back. The Packers take a step forward with some of the additions they made, like Xavier McKinney at safety and Josh Jacobs at running back. The Bears take a step forward with Caleb Williams and the number 9 pick and all the moves that they made during free agency, like trading for Keenan Allen. And the Lions just, you just want to keep going and you want another chance to get to where they were last year. So to me, I look at the Lions as the favorite. I look at the Packers and Bears as almost being right there, nipping at their heels. And I look at the Vikings behind them. But the beauty of the NFL is that's just the way that we think we have it. And for all we know, the Vikings win the division, the Lions finish in last, and the Bears and Packers are like it rarely goes the way you think it's going to.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's one of the things that Dan Campbell was talking about at the end of the season, going, hey, there's always changes year to year. There's always things that happen. But I wanted to ask you, you do seem generally positive about the Lions, but what do they really need to focus on to get back to that title game? And hopefully, for us Detroiters, we want to get to the Super Bowl. That's without a doubt. But what do the Lions need to focus on to kind of execute on that so that they go down the plan that at least us in Detroit would love to see.
Yeah. Well, to me, there's so much young talent on that team, right? Like if Jahmyr Gibbs just keeps taking the next step, if Jameson Williams takes the next step, if Aiden Hutchinson takes the next step, Penny Sewell, like they drafted so high for so long and were able to accumulate so much talent that you just need these guys to buy in. You can't get a team that is complacent and satisfied with what it did last year and think that it's going to duplicate itself this year just because you think you're good. It doesn't work like that. You need to stay healthy. The players need to stay hungry. The players need to improve. All those things need to happen, right? It's all there for them. They have to make it happen. It doesn't just automatically happen by showing up. They have not won consistently for a long enough period of time to think that this team is just an auto drive where you just click a button and it's on and they're going to show up and win games. The Lions haven't proven they could do that ever. So it's time to get back and be like a Michigander and get to work and work hard and put in a good day's effort. And if they do that, then they got a chance to get to where they want to go this year.
Well, Adam, I really appreciate your time here with us. Obviously, people can find you all over social media. I will link to everything. But if people want to get into that T1D screening, what can they do again?
Well, they go to theonepledge.com for more information. There's a lot of information right there. Go to your doctor, get screened. It's really important. Early information is my currency. I've built my career on the power and value of early information, which is why this movement is important and personal to me with my wife living with type 1 diabetes. It's the One Pledge movement, and you can get all the information you need at theonepledge.com. THE1 PLEDGE.com, theonepledge.com.
Adam Schefter, thank you so much for your time on Daily Detroit. I appreciate you.
Jaron Fletcher, thank you very much for having me on your 1400th episode.
And that is it for today. Thank you so much for listening to your Daily Detroit. If this is your first time here, do not forget to follow us in your favorite podcast app like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to shows. With that, I'm Jared Stays. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll talk tomorrow.